You cannot talk about Big Ten recruiting without talking about the battle of not only the Big Ten's number one recruiting class, but the battle of college football's top recruiting class, that being the Oregon Ducks and the USC Trojans. Now, depending on what service you look at, the Trojans might be number one or the Ducks might be number one in the country. A late surge from USC has gotten them to number one in the country right now in the 2026 class, according to some services. But for the longest time, it was Oregon that was the number one class in 2026. And I want to start with this Ducks class right now and just how loaded it is already with their commitments at the top right now. They have 4 commits within the top 45, according to 24/7 Sports right now. Cody Green, an offensive tackle for Mater Dei. Now, I'm going to mention Mater Dei High School a couple of times during this show, because that was a high school, of course, in Southern California, down there in Santa Ana, that a lot of players went to USC in previous years, a decade maybe or so in the past. But that has become a bit of an Oregon pipeline as of late. Some of the top players from that specific high school, a lot of people say the top high school football program in the United States of America, playing in probably the toughest high school league and conference in America. A lot of those players are going up to Eugene now, so they've certainly capitalized on that when USC has been a little bit down when it comes to a recruiting standpoint. But Cody Green has really shot up recruiting boards as of late. In the latest On 300 rankings, he shot up to the number 9. I think it was number 9 overall player. So he's in the top 10. Oregon is after 2 offensive tackles that are rated higher than Cody Green. Oregon did a great job getting some good, really good offensive alignment, high 4-star talent in the 25 cycle. So Alik Terry and company doing a great job recruiting on the offensive line, certainly. And Cody Green right now is going to be an offensive tackle that they're going to have in their bank and is going to, I think, play a big-time factor in Oregon Duck football in the future. Kendre Harrison, the number 1 tight end in the country, all the way on the other coast, on the East Coast, coming out of the state of North Carolina, is just an absolute specimen. They say it about a lot of people. This kid was built in a lab. I am convinced Kendre Harrison was built in a lab next to the Tyrannosaurus at Jurassic Park. Like, 6'7", 245 pounds, and he can run like a deer. Now, this might say something about his athleticism. Not only is he a Dan Lanning football commit, but he is a Dana Altman basketball commit for the Oregon Ducks as well. When you look at the Antonio Gates of the world and the Tony Gonzalez's, when you have guys in college playing multiple sports, that speaks to their athleticism at the tight end. Now, when you look at Oregon, they are becoming a little bit of a tight end factory. They just had Terrence Ferguson, who was the fastest tight end in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine, ran the fastest 40-yard dash of any tight end over there. And then they got a guy coming in Kenyon Sadiq. Pro Football Focus has him as I think the 6th-ranked tight end, which I thought was a little bit underrated, considering who was above him in this class. I think he could be a contender for the Mackey Award. And then you got somebody like a Kendre Harrison. Oregon is hot after 3 out of the top 5 tight ends in this class, but Kendre Harrison is going to top them all. I think he's got the potential to be really special. And Kendre is all in. He is 100% bought in. He's trying to make as many trips out to the West Coast. He's trying to get to Eugene as often as possible. I think he's taken a little bit of a role as now of a recruiter to try to get some of this other elite talent to come to Eugene, Oregon, certainly as well. Tredarian Ball, the running back out of Texarkana, Texas, Texas High School in Texarkana, Texas, over there, he's just the ultimate weapon. He's the ultimate weapon, and he tells you about it on social media. He's a very confident kid. There's a lot of running backs out there. I think that can do a lot of different things, but he can do it all. He can do it all. They line him up out wide. They line him up in the slot. They line him up at the traditional running back position. Now, when you talk about the ultimate weapon and when you talk about Oregon, you might think of somebody like a LaMichael James. You might think of a DeAnthony Thomas. in that mold. I thought of the mold of, like, remember Percy Harvin over at Florida, where they lined him up in the slot. He would motion into the backfield. He would contribute in the run game as well. He kind of did everything for those Tebow-era Florida offenses. I see Tre'Davious Ball in maybe a similar mold and a similar role possibly in his future at Oregon. They've got Bat Mulatalo, defensive lineman out of the state of Utah as well. And they are going to get more commitments in the top 50, folks. So the Ducks are not done. Let's move down the West Coast to USC. Right now they have 4 top 85 commits. You're looking at linebacker Xavier Griffin. More on him in just a minute. A couple of corners out of California in R.J. Sermons and Brandon Lockhart. Samante Katonga, a defensive lineman, another 4-star top 85 top of player as well. 3 of the 4 of them, all of them except Xavier Griffin, are from the state of California. General Manager Chad Bowden has come in, and they are putting a renewed emphasis on trying to get back and dominate the state of California. Now, let's talk about Xavier Griffin a little bit. Xavier Griffin is the one kid that's not from the state of California. 6'3", 200 pounds. He's listed as a linebacker right now. Now, 200 pounds might not exactly be the frame that you're looking for from a Big Ten linebacker standpoint, but he's extremely explosive and both coming off the edge in pass rush situations and finding the football. Like, he's able to use his linebacker radar. Once he finds the football, he's there. He's there, and he's there very, very quickly. I think his best role in college, unless he puts on a lot of muscle and really bulks up during his senior year, and he could certainly do that when he gets to USC, certainly as well. So over a 2 or 3 year span, he could certainly put on more weight. But I think you want to keep his explosiveness. I think he's going to work best probably from an outside linebacker or edge standpoint. That's where his film really pops. Now, I mentioned him being from the state of Georgia. This is a big commitment right now. A top 10, top 20 overall player in the country. But remember last class for USC, they had, Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry, a couple of 5-star defensive linemen from the state of Georgia. Hey, when you have 5-star defensive linemen from the state of Georgia, Kirby's going to come knocking. And a lot of times, Kirby's going to win. Those two guys flip their commitments out of Southern California, and we're obviously not USC Trojans signed on the dotted line in this 2025 class. So that's something that I would watch out for Xavier Griffin. Hopefully USC can retain him right now. I am so looking forward to a lot of recruiting battles down the stretch between the Oregon Ducks and the USC Trojans right now. Championships can be built with West Coast talent right now. In the 26 class and the 27 class. There is talent all over the place at a lot of different positions on the West Coast. So the battles between Oregon and now that USC is starting to really ramp up their NIL game, they're really starting to ramp up once again their West Coast recruiting game. These are going to be battles, and a lot of these battles over the last decade or so have been won by the Oregon Ducks. Now getting USC back into the game, we're going to see, I think, the next going into spring, going into summer, and then as we get closer to the season, this is kind of commit season coming up here in the next few months, it's really going to tell us how far USC has gotten in this short period of time since Chad Bowden has become the general manager right now. Currently, 3 of the top 10 players in the 24/7 composite in the state of California are already committed to Oregon or USC. I'd expect probably 3 more. Quarterback Ryder Lyons. Now, I thought Ryder Lyons, 5-star guy, he's going to take an 18-month mission. He's more of a 27 guy, really, at this point, but still a very, very talented quarterback out there on the West Coast. I thought he was maybe a USC lean. I watched an interview with him recently. He says Oregon is getting a hold of him almost every single day. Oregon is very invested. Really, the Oregon quarterback triangle, so to speak. They just lost Jonas Williams, who flipped over to USC. The reason that was now Oregon is putting their chips into the middle of the Jared Curtis table, who's the number 1 quarterback in the country out of Nashville, Tennessee, but they're also going after Ryder Lyons right here. I still tend to think he still might end up at USC between the two. Mark Bowman, here's Matter Day again, the number 2 tight end overall in this 2026 class. I tend to favor USC with him a little bit as well. We mentioned Kendra Harrison already committed to Oregon. There's a 5th-ranked tight end in this class in Brock Harris out of the state of Utah, and Oregon, I think is really heavy on him. He's another kid that's going to take a mission coming out of high school as well. Davon Benjamin is another name to certainly keep an eye on as well. And then you go to Brandon Arrington, a corner wide receiver type of combo guy over there. I think he can play both of these positions at the next level. Another guy in the state of California on the West Coast. He's got speed and length for days. 6'2", 180 pounds. Now, I was kind of watching some of these shows, guys breaking down his tape and what he could maybe play at the next level. They really liked his length when it came to being a defensive back. There's not a lot of spots. He's got that track speed, so having the track background might help Oregon in this recruitment right now for Brandon Arrington. But having that length and speed at the defensive back position, that can be difficult to find sometimes. But you look at his tape, and he's extremely explosive. You can certainly see the track speed on the football field as well. They were saying, hey, it's a track guy playing football, but there were some people that said, well, no, he's a football player with that elite level Olympic type of track speed as well, and that's a combination that you certainly want. Oregon and USC, very, very hot in this recruitment. Penn State and Texas A&M also in this one. Watch out for Tomahini Tupoi. Now, he's a defensive lineman coming out of Matter Day once again. They engineer a lot of high-level high school football players, if you haven't figured that out already. But Tomahini Tupoi, as a defensive lineman, he was the Trinity League MVP last season. There is smoke for a USC flip right here. And that would be a huge flip. Now, I talked about Jonas Williams and maybe the dominoes that fell and the reason why. I think both teams, if Oregon is able to go out and they're able to beat Georgia, and if they're able to get Jared Curtis right now, I think that's going to work out great for both schools. And I think that's certainly the way that it's trending for that specific position. But if USC is able to flip Tomahini Tupoi from Oregon, that is huge. That is going to be huge and really signal a momentum shift for the Trojans, certainly going forward as well. So Arrington, Tupoi, Ryder Lyons, Mark Bowman, Davon Benjamin, these are recruitments that I'm keeping an eye on. If USC is able to win a majority of these recruitments over Oregon, yes, I know that there's other schools involved, but if they're able to win a majority of these recruitments over Oregon, maybe the pendulum is going to start to shift a little bit. Oregon has a head start, okay? So it's going to take a little bit, I think, for USC to really be able to get to that point that they were in the past. And Dan Lanning is a hell of a closer. He's a hell of a recruiter. But, man, I am here for the battles. And I think the reason why I like USC why I love USC getting more involved in these recruiting battles and focusing on what they should focus. It should be a prerequisite. If you're a head coach at USC, you need to recruit the state of California well. There were too many SEC schools coming in to the state of California and winning these recruitments. Remember Bryce Young, the current quarterback of the Carolina Panthers? He was originally a USC commit. I think that was during the Clay Helton era. Alabama came in and flipped him. There have been some other players, quarterbacks, and other high-level players out of the state of California. Because USC has not been a high-level recruiting power, the SEC has been able to develop a little bit of pipeline over there to the Golden State. We got to shut that down. I think Oregon and USC right now, you look up and down the state of California, the top 10 to top 15 players. There's a lot of O's. There's a lot of interlocking SC logos as far as the leaders of a lot of these players. And that's the way it's meant to be. I can't wait to see these battles shake out.